I just wanted to make a video to talk a little bit more about the process that I personally use to record electric guitar and bass guitar because I think it will really benefit those of you that are recording um, not only from a home, but that are doing this professionally and want to have the most optimized and efficient setup for recording these two instruments as possible. That's especially important if you've got deadlines to work with, if you're working with clients, and there's just no there's just no way or no margin for you to have errors. Like if you just don't want to have a surprise, like let's say the client says that they don't like the guitar track, and you're like, but I already recorded it with the amp. I would have to go back and re-record that entire guitar part or whatever. Like so you don't have to get into those awkward conversations. So you can just be like, yeah, no problem, I'll change the tone, assuming they only have a problem with the tone. So the huge thing is that, like, like as a musician, that you cannot, you could get pretty close, but replicating a guitar part or a bass part exactly 100% the way it was is just, it's close to impossible. It'll always sound a little bit different. And let's say you just don't have time, like you spend like 1 hour nailing the part and getting the time right. And, you were in it that day, but then, a week passed and now you're just like, oh, I forgot the part or whatever, because we're moving really quickly in this industry. Like you're probably already have already worked on 2 or 3 other projects since that project. And then they ask you for the revision. So then you're just like, so here is my solution. And it's not just my solution for this. It's just like, I've been using this setup for a very long time because I just like to cover all my bases. Like that's just the way I roll. I just want to make sure that, I have as many options available to me as possible with, not that much resources. So I won't be able to demonstrate it 100% because I'm actually using input number 2 for the microphone that you're hearing right now. So this is actually a I guess you could call it a 2-channel recording chain. The first part is just gonna basically be the guitar that goes into the. I'm using, first of all, a universal audio interface, and that's really important as well because as you'll see, like I'm gonna load a plugin in right now. So this is using Universal Audio's Unison preamps. So already that's one thing. Like I'm not gonna get into it too much right now. Unison preamps, basically what they do is they just automatically regulate the impedance at the input stage. So it's kind of like you're using a DI box, but a bit like it's like you're using a dynamic DI box, which will actually adapt itself to your guitar's impedance, and it'll match the impedance to, let's say you're loading in, which I'm going to load in an amp, one of my favorite amp models right now. It'll basically replicate the circuitry of that analog piece of equipment. So like basically like it's almost like plugging into the real thing. So without getting into too much detail, that's what Unison technology does, the Unison preamps, which is important, right? For me anyways, that's important. Another important thing about universal audio interfaces is that they use onboard DSP processing, which means that basically these plugins, they're not loaded into your computer, they're loaded into the audio interface. So they're using the audio interface's CPU, which is basically allowing you to record in not 100% zero latency, but pretty damn close. Like it's like there's no delay whatsoever. It's like you're recording into the real piece of equipment. It sounds amazing, it feels amazing. It's like analog modeling and physical modeling to the next level. Like I cannot recommend universal audio enough, but that's not what this video is about. So basically channel 1 is going to be basically that. So I'm plugged in basically into a DI box, okay? And the DI box is on the floor. I'm using a Radial Pro 48 just in case you guys are interested. And the thing with that DI box is it has obviously the input with the balanced XLR output, but it also has a throughput, meaning it just, ejects your unbalanced guitar signal. So if you want to plug it into an amp or something. So my amp that I'm plugging into is the high impedance input of my universal audio interface. So That's input number one in this case. So then it's actually kind of like plugged into an amp when you think about it. It's a virtual amp, but nonetheless, it sounds like the real deal. So that's input number one, as you see right over here. And input number two right now is the microphone, but normally it would be the balanced XLR output of my DI box. And obviously, you know, you got the 48-volt phantom power that would be required for that. I also use a pad in some cases, depending on how high the level is, because, you know, these are high impedance instruments. And, you know, if you were using a passive DI box, it would be a little bit different. But trust me, it works with an active DI box as well. Just work with the pad, either the one that's on the DI box or the one that's if you have one in your audio interface. So basically that's what I do. And then what I would do is I would actually mute the monitor for the second channel, because I don't even want to hear it. Why don't I want to hear it? I'm basically just leaving it there as a backup for guitar anyways. For bass, I might actually mix it in there with the wet signal, you know, with the amp, and I might mix the DI in there. You know, the DI might be just like, you know, to get the high end or something, you know, and then the wet signal might be focused more on the low end, you know, because the DI, as you know, doesn't really provide much, you know, amplification, you know, for the bass, the bassiness part. So bass guitar is a little bit different. But anyways, electric guitar is, I literally just mute it. And because the advantage and the disadvantage of recording straight into real-time, you know, analog model plugins is that you can't go back. It's like you're recording straight into an amp, like, and you mic it, like, you know, you can't go back there and, you know, like resend the audio, you know, back in time. Like it's recorded, it's printed onto your hard drive. So uh, that's what I'm saying. If your client wants a revision or doesn't like the tone or whatever, and you're stuck with it, well, now you have the same performance. Okay, and in the DAW, what I would do is actually, let me see if I could load a session up for you guys. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you got the guitar track right over here, whether it's all my, like, you see the bass, they have like two tracks. They have like the main one and they have like the DI track. So if the guitar track is over here, and in this case I actually mixed it in with it, so I combined the both tracks together, the DI and, you know, the dry and the wet signal. But normally what I would do is I would literally have this here and I would just mute it, and it's just there as the backup. So like, let's say I want to reamp it, okay, and that's the term, is reamping. And this would work whether you would have an actual amplifier outside, you know, like externally, a physical amplifier, or you want to use a plugin. Basically, you got a fresh, you know, dry, unprocessed signal that is the same performance as what you worked with, but you can actually just, you know, if you don't like the sound, like, you know, you recorded it with the sound that you wanted or you thought you wanted, and then, like, whether it's you or the client, you know, and wants a different sound, well, then now you have this raw unprocessed signal that you can just feed through another amp again, and you can actually have a lot more control, because now you're not playing the computer or the whatever device, recording device you're using, is going to be playing it for you. It's going to be like re-performing that part for you, and you're going to just be adjusting the amp and the knobs and stuff just to dial in that perfect tone. So if you don't have time in the moment, or you don't want to take time in the moment, you just want to like record it as soon as possible, well, this is the best way to cover your bases. So like that way you have two copies of the same performance. And I hope you understand how beneficial this is in the long run and why I personally use this approach. It's just right now my setup, I'm really happy with it. I don't know if I'm going to be staying with this for the rest of my life. It might change. Everything changes. Everything evolves with time, but it's been this way for a while. And I think I've, you know, fine-tuned it to the point where, you know, especially in regards to the plugins and the specific equipment I'm using, like this is what works best. So I hope at the very least that this inspires you to create something similar in your home recording studio, like just to have like somewhat of a setup that's really efficient and professional like this. That way you can swap things in and out and you just have backups, and you just have everything you need to create without worrying about, what if I did something wrong? You could just basically cover your bases every step of the way. So if you have questions about my setup for recording electric guitar and bass at home for for professional purposes, leave them down in the comments. I'd also like to know if you have any future requests for videos. You can leave those in the comments as well. I'd be more than happy to make a video on a specific topic that you want more clarification or information on. And if you like what you hear, you like what you see, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow. It helps you keeps you in the loop for future videos, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one.